And I just realized I might have had lip gloss on my teeth the entire time I was talking during this video. So that's fantastic. I am not going to re-record it. I'm just going to power through. Hi, it's Aijing here, and today I'm going to talk you and myself out of buying the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette. So when I first saw this palette, I was like, ooh, that is pretty. And I saw the price and I was like, no. The word ethereal is just so well chosen. Like the whole palette, it just has that vibe. It's angelic, it's goddess-like, it's effortless beauty, light and airy. But you know, I just had that internal conflict. Like, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? And I watched a bunch of reviews, but then I still wasn't sure. And then, you know, you're like, you know, you shouldn't buy it.
Because you already have so much makeup.
And part of you is always just, you know, a little bit unpredictable as well. Whatever, one day impulsivity just takes over. And you just press the add to cart button and check out. Well, I'm here to squish that impulse for you and myself. So let's analyze this palette and talk ourselves out of buying it. So if this is your first time here, I have done similar videos on the Retro Glam palette by Natasha Denona and the Utopian Dream palette from Pat McGrath. Basically, I break down the palette formula, rearrange the color story, and do a makeup look that I would do if I had this palette, but with things I already have in my own collection. So like this look right here. I mean, if I may say so myself, I feel like it's pretty ethereal, right? What do you think? So basically this video is not your regular purchase or pass, buy or buy, where I just go through pictures on trend mood. I actually try to analyze the palette and talk you and myself out of buying it to save us money. So I basically do this to talk you out of buying makeup that you don't need and might even end up regret buying, and here to save you some money because, you know, money is quite important. It pays bills and food and other things important for survival. So when we look to buy an eyeshadow palette, we look at 5 things. 1, the formula. 2nd, color story. 3rd, potential looks. 4th, cost. And 5th, kind of these subsidiary things like packaging, where is it made, is it cruelty free, etc, etc. So those are the things I'll talk about in this video, and let's just jump into the formula first. So there are 3 different formulas in this palette. There are 7 suede mattes, 3 glossy shimmers, and 2 modern metallics. So I think the glossy shimmers are kind of the thing that is getting everyone, and in the video on Makeup by Mario's website, he describes this as a brand new formula that no other brand has. And I'm not saying that's not true, but I do think like the formula is still dupable, and I will be presenting with you some dupe in my collection. From watching the reviews for this formula, the glossy shimmer, quite a few people have said that there's fallout during application, there's fallout with wear. It's kind of emollient and wet to the touch, but might be prone to hard pan. So these are all of the cons that are associated with this type of formula. And then we've got the 7 suede mattes. Obviously, I'll be going into the color story later, but if we stick with the formula, again, look, from watching reviews, they're very, very, very powdery. So they're very, very soft, which will probably make it easy to blend. That can be a pro or a con, depending how familiar you're with makeup, like how you apply your own makeup, what kind of techniques you use. But I do think some people are pretty like annoyed when there's so much kickback and fallout. And obviously with all of that powder going around, your palette will get pretty dirty pretty quickly. Not that it matters. I mean, you use makeup gets dirty. But just remember to ask yourself, would you like using this palette? And then we have the 2 modern metallics, right? And I feel like they're just metallic eyeshadows. They're nothing special. No one said anything particular about these 2 metallic formulas. Let's get into the color story. So like the Retro Glam palette, I rearranged this palette as to how I would want to look at it from a more analytical perspective. So this is what the original looks like, and this is what I arranged palette looks like. So as you can see, a couple of these shades are basically dupes of each other. And when you're spending this much on a palette, or even just a palette that has 12 shades, right, you'll expect shades to not be dupeable within the palette. You don't want to have 2 shades that you can use interchangeably and not make any difference to your look. And I feel like those 2 medium browns in the middle look very similar. They have slight differences in tone, but let's be honest, like on the eye, will you notice difference? Probably not. Then the 2 lighter browns in the first row, I feel like they're similar to each other, and I know there are differences in depth, but I just think that the light color is so light that I won't have much use for it. I don't use these light bone shades to create makeup looks, and I know he included it to sort of blend out the edges of eyeshadow, but I feel like you can just use loose powder for that. You don't need a dedicated eyeshadow for it. And honestly, setting powder works just as well, if not better. So essentially, I feel like even though there are 7 matte shades, I'm actually only getting kind of like 4.5 shades, if that makes sense. And then the 2 different metallic color stories, like, they're fine. I think, you know, the darker metallic you can probably find in your collection already. I do think that silvery taupe looks quite unique, because from the reviews I looked at, people have said it's sort of cool toned but then sort of warm toned at the same time, so that did pique my interest, but I'm not going to buy an entire palette for just one shade to see what it looks like. Also, if you have this palette, let me know about that shade. Is it unique? Is it special? And then the glossy shimmers. I mean, I do think the promo photos on the website aren't great, and the swatches as well aren't great, but if you're a consumer and you're going on the website and looking at the promo photos, and you see this promo photo and you see my rearranged palette using promo photos, and these 2 shades, like the 2 shades in the bottom row, the first 2, they look the same. Tell me that they don't look the same. And looking at other people's swatches, I think there's like maybe one is more silver, one is like a champagne, and one is more like a gold. But when they're on your eyes, like, the difference is just going to be so subtle. So even though there are 3 shades, I feel like maybe I'm really only getting 1, because I imagine like I'll use the mattes, I'll do my look, and then I'll look at the glossy shimmers and I'll pick one. And I think I'm just going to pick any one without any reason. I'm not really thinking, oh, this one's going to look this way, this one's going to look this way. It's just, I think I'm going to use 3 in the exact same way. And there are a lot of dupes in my collection for the glossy shimmer eyeshadow. So many. I've got Dose of Colours, Block Party eyeshadow, by the way. Seriously, they are just the best shimmery eyeshadows. And then Urban Decay Moon Dust eyeshadows, specifically the shade Lithium and the shade Space Cowboy. And then there's that Shiseido eyeshadow as well. I don't like this. The Shiseido one was all over YouTube a few years ago and no one talks about it anymore, but it's freaking beautiful. And then of course we have the Colourpop Super Shock eyeshadows. There's Ritz, Frog, like, both are stunning. And I have this Bobbi Brown Luxe single eyeshadow that's kind of like gold copper topper shade. And honestly, when I saw this palette, I did think about the Il Makiage and Kathleen Light's collaboration, because I feel like those glossy shimmer shades just really reminded me of those 3 shades in her palette. And another thing that I immediately think of again is the Colourpop That's Taupe palette. I feel like I have featured Colourpop That's Taupe palette in so many of my recent videos. I mean, it's a great palette. It truly is. The color story is really, really good. And of course, the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk palette. Like, I know, yeah, like there are just so many things that are similar or have similar vibes in my collection. And after I went through all of my shimmery eyeshadows, it just kind of reminded me of how much makeup I own, how much I don't use. And honestly, it just took the urge to spend completely out of my system. So then we move on to the potential look. Mario did 2 beautiful looks on 2 like stunning women. One was day look, one was a night look. I'm gonna put the pictures up here. Do you see much difference in these looks? And after watching the videos, what I felt like was the way he made the looks look different was by the way he applied the eyeliner. And you can see from the picture I've inserted on screen that he's actually used different shades from the palette. I honestly felt like the looks just so similar. And this was the problem I had with a couple of the Lisa Eldridge palettes that I reviewed, specifically Muse and Cinnabar. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I feel like with the Lisa Eldridge palette, it's only 6 shades, but this is 12 shades. So I feel like to really get very significantly different looks, first of all, you have to apply the eyeshadow in a really creative way. So maybe do like a 60s liner look, because that's obviously going to look very different. And then you really have to stick with just the super light shades for a day look. Use the dark browns and like the really smoky metallic for a night look. If you use like one light shade, one medium shade, one dark shade to create a look, for every look that you create using different shades, but still using shades that are in the same depth, you'll still have the same look. Does that make sense? Probably doesn't. I mean, in my head it does, but Okay, so for a potential look, I did a kind of day look inspired by the day look picture from his website. What do you think? To start off this look, I used the pinky shade from the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk palette all over my lid just above my crease, and then I deepened the outer corner with the sort of rosy brown shade from the Pillow Talk palette. Then I used a combination of the two on my lower lash line. Then I decided to go into the Bieber palette by Natasha Denona, specifically using the shade Rust to give my outer corner a little bit more depth. And I also buffed this in on my lower lash line as well to give the lower lash line a little bit more definition. And then comes the star of the show, which is the Urban Decay Moondust eyeshadow in Space Cowboy. I think a lot of people have compared the glossy shimmers to Space Cowboy, and I honestly love this shade. I just used my finger to put it all over my lid. I stuck to the front 2/3 of my eye, and then I used a brush to put it in my inner corner as well, and a tiny bit on the lower lash line of my inner corner. And just like Mario, I used a brown liner. The brown liner I used was from Marc Jacobs Beauty. I used it to tight line my upper lash line, then just line the outer corner of my upper lash line like a tiny little wing. No, it's not even a wing, it's just a bit of eyeliner. And then I smudged it with a brush, then applied loads of mascara, and that was what I ended up with. What do you think about this look? I was really trying to do like a neutral, effortless, sort of ethereal kind of look. And I definitely think this is the vibe that I would get if I had a palette. I actually really like my makeup look. I love how shiny Space Cowboy is. Okay, and then we get to the fourth point, which is cost. So this would cost me £72 from the Makeup by Mario website. I don't even know how much shipping is. I don't want to find out. And then for you US beauties, you have to pay $68. So that is a lot of money. And finally, we had the packaging, and I think, it looks nice. Like, it's a matte, sort of hard plastic sort of packaging, and people have commented on how it feels nicer compared to its other palette. And also, Makeup by Mario is an independent brand, but obviously he's not like a small indie brand, but he's still an indie brand, but he's super famous, so I doubt he'll struggle. But who knows? Makeup is very saturated nowadays, like beauty YouTube. And I think another nice thing is that this brand is cruelty-free, so definitely not tested on animals, not sold in China. And that is something that I do care about, and I want to use more cruelty-free brands. So overall, I mean, this is a nice palette for sure, but I feel like you can see from my rearranged palette that there are many shades that are redundant, particularly if you consume a lot of beauty content and you're someone who has a large collection. I don't think this palette will be unique. The best description for this palette probably is it's a bridal makeup palette. And I honestly feel like if you're a bridal makeup artist, you'll probably love this palette, and I feel like your client will probably love this palette as well. You can, create many similar looks but on different people. But if you're just a regular person, you might be disappointed with the look that you create because it won't be that varied. I mean, this is my 2 cents. Who knows, maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about. There are many people out there who enjoy a neutral palette. Don't doubt that this palette is of high quality. So I'll be really interested to find out if you have this palette, how do you feel about it? And if you don't have this palette, what you think of buying it? Has this video changed your mind in any direction at all? And if you've reached this point, I really hope you'll subscribe. I like doing videos like this because I'm not made out money. I can't buy everything to review for you guys, but obviously I do reviews with actual products in front of me. Just check out my Lisa Eldridge videos. Yeah, so thank you for watching again, and please subscribe. So bye. I don't know. So yeah, I guess that's it.